that they feel they should articulate such an emotion because there's so much guilt associated with pleasure. But pleasure is a very, very basic human desire, human need, and it's also the ultimate luxury. If you can get the most amazing handbag on earth, but if it's not giving you any pleasure, it's really a dead.
Shobha Ray, thanks so much for joining us here at She the People on Sisterhood. If there's anyone I've seen kind of embody the idea of sisterhood, it's you. I've seen you, through your career, been inspired by your journey. Also seen how easily you traverse, the haves and the have-nots and make their connections and then bring it on a plate for all of us. What I loved about your book, Insatiable, was actually the title. It's got this sense of what to expect, what not to expect, and then there's all of it comes together. So thanks so much. Yes, I have it too. So
Thank
there
you.
it is.
Thank you. I'm doing a bit of hard sell. Yeah, I like the title because it really says everything that I want to say about my life as I've lived it, and also about my life. Years that remain, I hope I remain insatiable and constantly hungry for experience, for beauty, for newness, adventure. A few wicked things here and there are always good in terms of what I write, what I feel, what I recount, what I share.
Yes. So, the whole idea of your hunger to life, for life, there's one thing about you that I think, okay, and I want you to elaborate on, is this true? And, if you feel the same, I think that it's your wickedness. You're out there, you're grabbing it, you're noisy, and then you're finding something that kind of comes alive.
I think irreverence is a better word because it's the connotations are more positive, but irreverence certainly has defined my choices, and I'm so glad that it has because there are too many people who are too afraid. They don't want to take chances with anything, any aspects of their lives or their creativity, what they wish to share with people in the public domain. There are very few risk takers, and I can kind of get it because women are at risk regardless. Whether you're irreverent or you aren't irreverent, you're putting yourself out there every time you say something that can potentially upset someone. Even your silence can be used against you. So, irreverence has always come kind of naturally to me from a very, very young age. It's an active choice that I made a long time ago, maybe as a rebellious teenager growing up in a conservative, bureaucratic family and not being able to connect to what maybe they were trying to instill in me, which is to conform and to be a good girl, whereas everything about me was saying, just run, like run Lola, run, run Shobha, run from anything that is likely to cage me or inhibit.
So, I like the way you said the word choice. Now, a lot of people have to take risks because of circumstance. But in your book and in your conversations, you often make this about a choice. Tell us a little bit about that choice.
But choice is the one word which I consider the most powerful word, especially for women. But like you pointed out, not every woman is in a position where she can make informed choices. She can make a choice, all right, but it's not always an informed choice. Sometimes very difficult circumstances compel her to make a choice which is against her own interests. And that is something I feel very strongly about, that any woman, any man, anyone in the world who is stripped of that very powerful word choice is really a slave to circumstances or slave to destiny. I don't know how else to put it. Slave to a certain karma that there seems to be no escape from. But having said that, I also believe that choice in many ways empowers you no matter what the risks involved are. Once you make that choice and take a decision, that is a tough one, that's a difficult decision, it makes you that much stronger. You may have to go through months, maybe years of struggle, of hardship, but at least you have something intact, which is your self-respect. And there's no price to be paid for that.
Or is there a price? Because I wonder at the time that you were ahead of many to take that risk or make a choice that stood out, or as they would say, she was very different in her times because she was not doing what others were doing, which is basically being a nonconformist really at many levels. So at that point, did you get deterred? And what gave you the strength to say, listen, I am going to make this choice?
I have never felt deterred when I have made up my mind to do something. I have always taken what comes with the turf, and I think that's an important message to send out. That difficult decisions involve difficult. The results may not always be what you'd like them to be. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to assume the responsibility of that decision? Because if you're not, that's when you feel defeated. But if you go in there with your eyes wide open, knowing that it's going to cost, and every decision in life comes with a price tag. There's nothing that you get a free ride, nothing at all. So I have never doubted my ability to cope, regardless. And that stays with me even today. I don't think there's anything in the world that I can say instills that kind of fear in me that, oh my God, I simply won't be able to handle this, or it's too much at this point in my life where I need to take this on. If it's something worth fighting for, you bet I will fight that fight till the end.
We all, men and women, make wrong decisions, but women always pay a bigger price for their wrong decisions, sometimes much harder on themselves for those wrong decisions. How have you navigated the decisions you thought went wrong for you? And, if there was sort of a turn back at such a decision, what might you pick?
Well, we are always beating ourselves up. I think society expects women to do that constantly. And also there is a great amount of guilt which is piled up if you're doing something that is not validated by those around you. If you don't have a support system in place, and if you're looking for validation in the first place. Well, I've never looked for validation. I really have a very strong self-belief system in place. And I think most women do, whether they know it or not. It's just that there are enough people around them trying to demoralize them and also distract them and get them to get off the path that they have chosen for themselves by making it appear something terrible and something that they should be ashamed of. It takes courage, but nothing in life that you want for yourself can be achieved without yourself being put out there. You have to put yourself on the line, and then you have to take what comes. You cannot say, I'm going to do this, I don't care what it costs, and I want someone else to pay the price for that. No, the price and the buck ends with you. Can you handle it? If you can't handle it, don't even go there. But don't expect soft landings if they don't exist.
When I listen to you, I wonder, most of the time one would think that you come from a position of privilege, right? But at the same time, I think you sound like many of us who don't come from that position of privilege. I mean, it seems like there's an equalizer for all women at some level, that we go through this, whether or not we know our validation, whether we know we can do it or not, irrespective of privilege.
But privilege itself is a loaded word. I don't know what exactly is implied by that word. If it means you come from a certain socio-economic background that cushions you, yes, certainly I do. It's not always been this way, but for the past several decades, I have known no other kind of life where I don't really have to worry about where my next meal is going to come from, which is the reality of the majority of our women. There are times when they really don't even know whether they're going to get through the night on an empty stomach, or they're going to get a meal when they wake up the next morning. That reality does not mean that you insulate yourself from, from the world. If the privilege does not insulate you, it does not provide any kind of immunity. You are there, you are a woman, you have empathy, you can sense it in 90%, maybe 95% of women around you. You have experienced a lot yourself. I certainly have. And that has made me, I think, a much stronger person. But it's easier to say from my position where, like I said, I don't have to worry about paying my bills, and in the sense of I don't have to worry about will I have enough money to pay next month's rent. But that still does not mean I don't feel I don't feel what thousands of other women feel. It may not be the same physical experience, but the emotional experience of 95% of women across the world, regardless of our cultural background, regardless of our socioeconomic privileges, the emotional trajectory is not all that good, because society makes sure that you feel what you feel. Like being born a woman can makes you feel at all times vulnerable, and nothing protects you. Not money, not social position, not success.
Yeah. I'll pick something from your book as it journeys through the idea of cultures, food, access, choices, to the idea of pleasure. This book kind of draws you again and again towards different kinds of pleasures of adventure, of meeting people, of enjoying food. So women love to think pleasure is not important at so many levels.
I don't think they think that, they feel they should articulate such an emotion because there's so much guilt associated with pleasure. But pleasure is a very, very basic human desire, human need, and it's also the ultimate luxury. If you can get the most amazing handbag on earth, but if it's not giving you any pleasure, it's really a dead luxury, isn't it? At the same time, if you can derive pleasure from eating pani puri at your favorite pani puri vendor, then at that moment, that is so pleasurable that it actually is seen as a luxury. That's how I would see it. That I'm able to enjoy something with the fullness of my palate, with my heart soaring, and I feel free to do it. A lot of women are not even free to step out of their homes to enjoy a pani puri or a bhel puri. So everything has a perspective, everything has a component that makes us think of how maybe uh, limited a lot of lives can be, because they're denying themselves something as basic as pleasure, which can be physical, it can be emotional pleasure, it can be aesthetic pleasure. And listening to music doesn't cost money. But if you're tuned out of that word completely and you're telling yourself as a woman that I have no business to be listening to great music because I actually need to be doing something else that's more useful, that's more constructive, and music is making me feel somehow that I'm wasting my time. It's a mindset that a lot of women need to free themselves from. That pleasure is not something that guilt-inducing, should never be looked at like that. The smallest of pleasures, even just a gentle stroke on your head by someone you love, a hug, anything that's tactile, which makes you feel you're human, that you're alive, that touch matters. It's pleasurable, and you should enjoy every bit with no guilt at all.
It's interesting the way you put this whole thing together, because the more I think about our lives as journalists, it's almost like, imagine showing a woman enjoying herself or a party. It would at best land up at page 3, and the concept of woman having fun is completely absent from the way we've ever projected her, right? Unless you project her as somebody who's sort of wallowing in her own vanity. And the same holds true today as as a mom of daughters, or as just like a friend of many other women. You see how they judge women who want to talk and stake claim to sexual pleasure, Do you see that being more conversation, or is there more to it now finally?
Oh, much, much more to it. I mean, the conversations around it are almost deafening. In fact, suddenly there seems to be a dam that's burst, and women are dying to share their sexual feelings, their sexual adventures, some of the forbidden stories, those that may have been considered extremely shocking when they were growing up. They're also willing to go into dark areas like sexual abuse, which in the past would have been the worst kind of secret for a woman to hang on to till she dies because of shame involved. So there's no pleasure involved in that, but certainly it is an act of sex that is that's uninvited and abusive and violent and nasty. But there's no taboo around any of that anymore, and that's I think seeing a lot of women. They're also talking about alternative ways of seeking physical pleasure, and that is also something I find very positive and opening up a whole new world where they're more experimental, um, they're more at ease talking about, say, multiple partners or same-sex sexual experiences, or even their own sexuality, whether or not they feel what they feel as women, or whether they have moments which are ambiguous, given all the conversations around the LGBTQ. Uh, I can't remember the rest of the alphabets in that, but it's an all-inclusive world in terms of sexuality, and it's important to be cognizant of it and sensitive to it because women are exerting those choices more and more and more. Oh, this whole, I mean, it's a sea change, which I can only think of as being very positive.
In the spirit of Insatiable, is marriage up for a complete rethink in our world?
I don't believe it is because a lot of people, not just of my generation, but much younger, they are clamoring for something that they can hang on to, that provides a sort of stability and central, like a focal point in their lives, which otherwise can be so diffused, so confusing, so exciting, but also so troubling. So, in all this flurry of seeking new thrills, new excitement, if you're fortunate enough to be with a partner who understands what life means, life at its very basic, it could be whether it's your job, it's your desire to have children or not have children, to live in a certain way, to maybe give up city life for a very different existence in some distant village somewhere. You have to be in sync with the person you choose. So marriage is providing that for a lot of young people. They like the sense of continuity. They like the sense also that it's marriage to choice, unlike in previous generations. Most of them, educated modern women, we are not talking about rural realities, have chosen their partners, right? So they also know that it's no longer that tough to get out of the situation if they find it in some way intolerable. Both partners are free to end a relationship that's no longer meaningful. And that in itself is giving women courage to commit to a marriage, commit to even an experimental period of living with a partner for a few years. Parents are much more accepting of such choices, whether or not that ends up in marriage. But they are not going to condemn their children and say that what you're doing is disgraceful and we disown you for going into a relationship which is immoral or however you want to call such a relationship illicit. That's changed. But marriage, I don't see it ever being considered that unimportant. Or maybe we'll go through phases, but we'll always come back to that because I think if you're looking at the next generation, if you be committed to family itself, then marriage does provide that rock for the next generation to feel a sense of security and we cannot deny them that. We really cannot. It's not fair.
What was that one piece of advice that you gave your daughters who got married?
Oh, I gave them just a word to think about, a C-letter word. It's called commitment.
I'm so glad you didn't say compromise.
Oh gosh, like Seema auntie, 60%, 70% adjustment, compromise.
I know.
Criteria. No, the commitment, I said, if you're not committed to the idea of marriage and the partner that you picked, if the word commitment is not something that you value and are ready to say yes, if this is the one word that's going to matter to me, even through difficult times in marriage, because there's no such thing as sailing on anything but the high seas when you're in a marriage. It's not a placid sea. It has its storms, and how you're going to weather them really defines the quality of your relationship. So commitment it is. I mean, you commit to the idea of marriage, you commit to the one person that you are in love with at that point, you can make it work, even if it seems very daunting at times. Unless everything around you collapses and the systems around you collapse, something awful happens. But otherwise, there's really no reason to even get into marriage if you don't feel that sense of commitment.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you what you've been asked before. And especially I remember, hearing from Bachi about your 70th and all of that. And, all women that I know always say, how does Shobha do this, right? And I haven't seen you that long just because I'm younger, but I have seen your pictures at the same place in the Taj Mumbai hotel so often. And I keep thinking, there's very little changed about you over the years. So what is it about Shobha that keeps her just on the ball? It's one thing to have a physical, attractiveness restored. But look at you. You are like, you're like questioning us, even as us, you know what I mean? And making us think.
Okay, so there's nothing that has been restored. So that's very important to say. Physically, there is nothing at all that has been interfered with. I do not believe in any kind of surgical interventions. I have no problems with my age. I have no problems growing older. However, whatever that may look like, I'm okay. I'm really okay with it. I've always been okay with it. So there's no anxiety. So if you say I'm looking a certain way, it's because I've never had that that desperation to look anything other than myself, and that already is the best beauty secret. If you feel okay with yourself, if you feel fairly happy within yourself, and you do have a jar of Pond's cold cream handy at all times when your skin tells you that it's feeling thirsty, and that's really my top secret. It's cold cream, which is the only thing I've ever used from a very, very young age. And trying to address that for a lot of young women who feel when they're hitting 40 and just after hitting 40, when they've had their maybe couple of first two kids, the kind of pressure that society builds up around you to keep looking hot. I mean, that word hot itself, I see red. Because it's sexualizing a woman, it's objectifying a woman in a way that's making her feel not so great about herself, because all around her are these people who are desperate to look hot, and some of them are even succeeding. So I think just be yourself. And in my case, I'd say a lot of the credit, if you're paying me a compliment and saying I'm looking good, I can only attribute it to good genes, being born into the right gene pool, and not leading a life that's indisciplined. I believe it or not, I lead a very structured and very disciplined life. I may have 3 Negronis too many when I'm in the mood for a cocktail, but other than that, it's really a pretty regular kind of life with no heady excess. I mean, nothing that hedonistic. But I love the perception and the image that for me life has been, one non-stop party. Well, for those who believe that that's so, well, keep fantasizing. It's a good fantasy to have, but I wish that was my reality. It's not. I work very hard. I enjoy what I do, and I think that in itself is a beauty secret. If you're getting paid to do something you love doing, and you've been doing it, and I have been writing non-stop without a break, without missing any deadlines for over 55 years in print. And if I'm still excited about writing a column, then good for me. Staying relevant is not a cakewalk, but that is also a challenge because most of my contemporaries and colleagues, I mean, either some of them are no more, and those who are not really visible or not really considered very relevant. So to make that happen, for yourself, is a challenge. And are you up for it? If you're not, forget it. Lead a retired life. For me, the R word is not a very pleasant word. Retirement, no chance.
Yeah, you know, you did say cold cream Negronis as your beauty secret. I just love that. But I think there's one question I want to ask you that, like you said, staying relevant. It's not just staying relevant with the times, it's also being relevant in the head with how we approach things, how we adopt new things. And in our world now, the level of adoption expected out of every individual is sort of skyrocketing. Every day we have to learn new things and stay, interested in what are new platforms, artificial intelligence for the latest one of them. In that sense, do you remind yourself this often that you've got to be a voracious learner and that you can't depend on somebody else? Because we all may be married to partners, have children, have families that don't think about relevance like the way we all do.
You don't have to be obsessed by relevance. That in itself generates stress. You just have to be open and receptive to newness, new experiences, and choose that which interests you, and then get to know more about that to stay relevant. For example, right now, AI is interesting me a lot because I just saw one of my great, massive crushes. That's Mohan Lal, the actor from Kerala. And I saw him doing the Godfather series on Instagram. And that's entirely AI generated, which made me wonder that soon actors, even of his caliber, may be out of work, out of job, because if you can do an AI generated, such a faithful recreation of an iconic scene from an iconic film, and most people wouldn't even know it's AI generated and may possibly think that Mohanlal has taken the trouble to play Godfather. The deep fake news and all of it does interest me, but there are a lot of things out there which my children keep sending me forwards. My husband sends me forwards non-stop. So do the kids. Some of it interests me, some of it doesn't. Like today, I am deeply interested that Madonna is in ICU, and that came to me on a news feed, and one of my children said, but that's also because I'm such a great admirer of hers, and I hope she pulls through. But if there's going to be something about Kim Kardashian, I'm really not that interested, and if that makes me irrelevant, so be it. There's so much I can invest in a very successful lady's butt, which has made fortune for her, but she's also extraordinarily bright and ambitious, and she's just a phenomenon of our time, or she would not be listed in the 100 most influential people. I think she's on the current cover of Time magazine for being in Kardashian, and she's earned that place. But am I that interested in her? No. If it means I'm out of a certain conversation with much younger people, so be it. So you choose what you want to be interested in, what you want to invest.
Just one final question. To me, this book, Insatiable, and the many books that you've written and I've read, just always has one headline for me, whether I like it or I don't, is that, oh, this was a very honestly written book. And I just sometimes think of, if you're going to hear it from Shobha Day, she's going to say it in her style of honesty. I wonder if that should be called your beauty secret.
Well, honesty always comes with a price tag, as I'm sure most women will agree. But it's still, for me, it sounds like a cliche, but not just the best policy, but the only policy. I wouldn't know how to be another kind of person, and I don't wish to be another kind of person. If you're going to write and you cannot share your truth, then maybe you should think of doing something else. But if you're going to be writing and some aspects of your life which you may or may not be completely comfortable with, you may not have come to terms with, but if you cannot put it out there, then don't bother.
Thanks so much, Shobha Day. It's been so entertaining reading stuff you write, whether it goes from Dahibala to dhotis of ministers and everything in between. Thank you so much for being insatiable and make us feel the same.
Thank you. That was such a pleasure.